Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. And we've always promised the biggest interviews in the world of combat sports. Well, we're finally delivering one with the biggest one we've ever had. We welcome Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy, thanks for joining us, my man.
Oh, are you kidding, man? I appreciate you guys having me on, man. This is awesome.
Hey, so I'm glad you made some time for us. One of the things I wanted to pick your brain about, I'm sure you watched the fights last weekend. A lot of people in your division were fought. So, I mean, did any new interest pop up in your mind as far as like what you saw? I mean, what was your take on all the 170 pounders on that card?
You know what? I'm glad. I mean, this weekend was huge for our division, for the 170 division, just because it's been held up for the past year. I mean, with the Colby Covington and the Usman debacle, who was going to get the title shot. So you had a lot of 170s kind of holding off on fights just to see who's going to get that next shot, you know? So it was very important for me. And I'm looking at every one of them. And all those guys are high-level opponents. And anybody in the 170 division has the potential to put you away, especially the guys that fought this past weekend. Of course, you had Ben Askren, moving over from ONE FC over to the UFC, who put on an awesome show. Him and Robbie Lawler, obviously. Great fights there. There was a controversial stoppage that happened. I feel bad for Dean, to be honest with you, because it was kind of hard to see. Did y'all saw that, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of difficult because Robbie Lawler was in that chokehold. I'm pretty sure it was around his jaw area, but the way he dropped his hand, it looked like he was out. And then when his hand got shook, I had to go back and watch it. He did give a thumbs up, and then Dean ended up stopping the fight. But Dana White said they're going to run it back, so we'll see.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad timing on that. When Dean was moving his eyes, initially looked at the hand and it kind of looked limp, and then when Lawler gave him the thumbs up, Dean had already looked up at Askren to basically wave the fight out. So I think it was just a kind of a lack of communication in a real tough situation when obviously Herb Dean, doesn't. It's one of those things where if he lets that go, you don't know how long he's been out, and
Exactly.
Obviously, and
he's there for your safety, man. He's there for your safety, and you can't fault him for that because the way his hand hit the mat, it looked like he was out. And of course, if I was out, I would want him to stop it, for me. So, and that was a hell of a fight from start to when it ended. I mean, Ben Askren getting dumped on his head and then almost getting knocked out.
Yeah.
Coming back and having that headlock position, squeezing and I hear it's so funny because Ben Askren's got this dad bod. And he doesn't look strong at all, but from what I hear, he's got some crazy strength, man. Got just country strong from wrestling his whole life. So, but any one of those guys, I've been shooting for the Robbie Lawler fight for a while now, and it just hadn't happened. I've been out for the past 7 months from the Till fight. I ended up injuring my MCL, and then I was trying to shoot for the Robbie fight, and of course he was coming off of a knee injury, and it just didn't line up. So hopefully we'll get that fight here pretty soon for the fans,
Yeah, that actually leads me to my next question. After that fight, you had done the interview with MMA Junkie, where you said you wanted to change the style that you fight, not change your style, but like not leave it to the judges anymore. You know what I mean? I guess be more aggressive or not so much as a counter striker. Is that something you've been working on for your upcoming fight?
Oh, definitely. I've been playing the game a lot because I've been facing a lot of wrestlers. I mean, pretty much my whole UFC career has been a lot of wrestlers, fighting, Jake Ellenberger, Johnny Hendricks, Tyron twice. It kind of lured me into this strictly counter-punching game plan that I had with these guys because they're aggressive and that counter-punching plays right into that game. So, but then you get the guys, and Tyron really played it smart the second go round. Instead of coming forward, he just backed up to the cage, and it kind of threw me off a little bit. So I've been working a lot on not over aggressiveness, but allowing my opponent to feel that I'm there. Because a lot of times when you're moving around, you're counter punching, you're backing up, waiting on your opponent to come forward. Your opponent kind of feels relaxed because they know you're not going to do anything until they throw the strikes, So we've been playing with that a lot, man. Brought some really good strikers in for this camp. So obviously wrestlers, because everybody that I face is looking to take me down eventually. From the experience I've had in the past, once I start lining them up on their feet, they're wanting to shoot.
Yeah.
And if Anthony Pettis does want to keep it standing, awesome. But I'm prepared wherever the fight goes.
Yeah, one of the things that stand out to me, obviously, with this matchup you have coming up with you and Pettis, obviously, you guys both have a karate base. So, I mean, it's that's what makes the fight really exciting, because it's like, if you guys do stand up, it's going to be a striker's delight. But then obviously when you're playing into the chess match of fighting, somebody's going to look to change the game. So. I just think that's a pretty cool matchup. I mean, is that something that you've taken into consideration for this camp?
Oh, definitely. This fight really excites me, man. I mean, kind of like when I fought Masvidal, because like I said before, most of my fights have been against wrestlers, So I haven't had that real, you had Masvidal, you had Darren Till, but I ended up tearing my MCL like in the first round. So my movement kind of went out the window for that one. But it excites me because, Anthony Pettis has a Taekwondo background. I have a karate background, and I believe that he is more prepared for my style than anybody else anybody else that I face or in the 170 division at this point, because we have such a similar style. Even though he's coming up from 155, you got a lot of guys coming up from that weight class doing work in the 170 division. Obviously, Donald Cerrone, you had Michael Chiesa come up and submit Carlos Condit. Masvidal, who used to fight at 155, who's doing very well in the 170 division too. He's getting ready to fight Darren Till, I believe. So, it puts a smile on my face and excites me a lot, just knowing the fact that this guy is going to he's trying to beat me at my game, and that's why I love this fight. I love the fight game, because it's a chess match for guys like that. I'm trying to figure you out. I can look at you, I can watch your fights, and I can prepare from what I see. But if you're a smart opponent that I know Anthony Pettis is, he's going to make some changes. So it's up to me to adapt to that mid-fight while I'm out there, and that's what's fun to me.
At the 170-pound class, basically you talk about Robbie Lawler, and that was a fight that a lot of us fans kind of saw as a really great matchup stylistically, because he comes forward and, ideally you want somebody coming forward at you. When they offered Pettis, that had to be kind of a nice little surprise, because I can't imagine he was really on your radar.
No, not at all. Like, to be honest with you, I'm a fan of Anthony Pettis, watching him and him being in the 155 weight class and us having a similar style. I love watching this guy fight, and he's a go-getter. Like, he's a tough dude. I mean, going back and watching that fight against Tony Ferguson, breaking his hand, and his coaches wanting to, ended up stopping it. But the guy was a bloody mess, and he was just like, in the middle of the octagon, it's like, what in the world? But I had no idea. He wasn't even on my radar. But it was one of those situations where I was trying to fight Robbie Lawler. Didn't happen. I was trying to fight RDA. He was coming off an ear surgery. Wanted to fight, I think it was Leon Edwards. He said his sciatica was acting up. Ponzinibbio said, I just don't want to fight you. And I'm like, what the heck, man? And then we got this. So I've, been out for 7 months, not having anything. I was actually going on vacation. I was headed to Denver, Colorado, going to do some snowboarding up there. Shh, don't tell Dana that. and I took my phone off of airplane mode. My phone was blowing up. I'm like, what in the world? And that's how I found out that Anthony Pettis called me out. And that's pretty cool too, because you're still in a world where fighters can make their own fights through social media, it's a fan fight. That's what it is. We're doing it for the fans. And Anthony Pettis, his goal is to fight the best guys in the world. Him being a striker, I'm being a striker. We want to test our skills against each other, and we're going to put on a show come March 23rd.
And so, I mean, I know you got your focus on the March 23rd fight, but you had just mentioned something about obviously how well you do against wrestlers, obviously, and you mentioned Askren with him in the mix. He got to fight Robbie Lawler. Does if something happens with a negotiation that they want Askren to fight someone else in the future, like say maybe in July or the fall or whatever, would you be up for an Askren fight?
Man, anybody in that top five, or I don't think he's ranked right now, but it doesn't matter. I know that I'm going to face him at some point. I know that I'm going to face those guys in the top five at some point, and I am prepared. I am preparing myself for that. And he's one of those guys, man. He's like me. You know, I'm a striking specialist. He's a wrestling specialist, but man, he's like Olympic level. This guy, you know. So it's a scary fight for anybody in the 170 division, knowing that. Yeah. And you saw the punishment he took this past weekend and kept going. It's like, what in the world? Didn't even go the whole first round, and he looked like he went through a 5 in a round war. But that's how he fights. You know, he's a gritter, and those guys that are like that, it messes with a lot of mentally. No, if you're gonna fight this guy, you better be ready for a hell of a fight, a 5 in a round, just war. You know what I'm saying? And that's how he likes to bring it. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't matter. I would, you know, we're gonna face each other at some point. I know that. I know he's shooting for Darren Till right now, and I know Dana White's trying to get that rematch with him and Lawler. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
If that goes to fruition and they have a rematch, and right now we're probably looking at Usman Covington. If you put, I mean, let's say you put away Pettis, I can't imagine that leaves you too far out of the loop. Then with, I mean, obviously getting a third fight with Woodley would have been tougher. It's just historically that's just a tough thing to make happen for any fighter in any era really of fighting to get a third fight. Usman winning kind of rejuvenates the division a little bit for you as far as getting back to the top. I'd imagine. So I think with a good performance against Pettis, you're essentially the alternate for that fight. At least in from the outside looking in, I would think that would have to be kind of how it is.
I hope so. You know, I'm ranked number 4 right now, and it would be. And I was shooting for Usman to win that fight, man. And of course, I like Usman. Usman's such a cool dude, and he's a class act. To be honest with you, I think he's a good fighter, just a high level wrestler. So going back and watching that fight, man, he did exactly what he said he was going to do against Tyron. And Tyron, I don't know what was going through his head, but it didn't look like the same Tyron that I faced, you know, not too long ago. So I don't know what was going on. I know he said he was in good shape. And sometimes when you go out there and fight, you got those days where, you know, you want to throw this punch or you want to throw this technique and it's just not happening. Your body's like saying, nah, it's not going to work. So, you know, we have those kind of fights. And I think Tyron's going to come back from that. But yeah, man, I'm hoping so. You know, I go out there, put on a show for you, for the fans, and let's say I go out there and knock Pettis out. Maybe looking at one more fight. Hopefully, I'll be the alternate. You know, but you know, I'm 36 years old, and I got a small window to kind of do what I want to do, and I'm not giving up on that title until I get it, man.
Yeah. I have to ask you, I heard that you weren't doing your regular training, like you weren't coming up north, right, to work out with Weidman and those guys. You're doing a different camp this time around?
Yeah, the reason for that is
it winter?
Say that again?
What, is it because of winter?
Man, no. To be honest, I've been up there and the winter's horrible. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
I've been up there so many times with Weidman, and there'd be like 5 feet on the ground. Waking up in the morning, having to shovel his driveway off. You know what I'm saying? He puts me to work when I go up there. But no, he ended up hurting his neck he hurt his neck, I think last year or 2 years ago. He had surgery on it. They had to go in and fuse a disc or something like that. They went in through the front of his neck. And when he took that shot from Jacare, man, I was there sitting cage side for that. And that was such a devastating thing to see because Chris Weidman was beating him. He was winning, you know, and that goes to show that this game is brutal. I mean, it doesn't care. Like you go out there and you're beating somebody up and it just takes one shot, you know. Yeah. And he ended up hurting it again, so they had to have surgery again. So I wasn't able to go up there because he's in healing mode. But, you know, I always love going up there. But, you know, he's family now, you know, so it's great to go up there and spend some time with him. And just the confidence that I get going up there and wrestling with that guy and sparring with that guy, one of the best wrestlers in the 185 division. He's got great striking and his cardio. He's got cardio for days. But I wasn't able to make it up. So we got good guys. I brought some guys in. My buddy Carl Reed, who fights at 205. He's the college coach at Limestone University. He's a wrestling coach there. But he's an up-and-coming fighter and a monster. Great wrestling. He moves like I do. He's a karate fighter too. Mm-hmm. So I had him. I have my brother Evan from Dallas come in, who's a high-level striker as well. My buddy John Sweeney. So I've got the wrestling. I've got the jiu-jitsu. I've got the striking. So I kept my camp here this time.
I saw that. Sorry, Ed.
Go ahead.
I saw that you were opening up your own gym too with your parents. You just broke ground on something in the last couple of weeks. Is that something that's been in the works?
Oh yeah, man. That's been in the works for years. My dad opened up his school in 1983, the year I was born. And of course, there's 5 kids. You know, I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we all started the martial arts at the age of 3. No say so. Nice. We were living in his household. It was mandatory that we were training. My older sister, fought before I did. She kicked my butt for years, bro. And so my dad opened up a school in 1983, and we had this little hole in the wall that he started out in. He was working 3 jobs and trying to run a martial arts school. My mom comes in and just turns that a little hole in the wall into what we got now. We have over 750 students in the small town of Simpsonville, South Carolina. We've got 3 generations of martial artists come through there. We got grandkids of grandparents that took from my dad, you know? So we've been in our gym now for since 1986, and we've been busting. We're in a little over 11,000 square foot, and we've been busting out the seams of that for years. You know, we're almost like we're turning people away. So we can't be doing that, and we're getting ready to open up a 20,000 square foot facility, literally across the street. And nice. So we're building our own spot, man. We're excited. We are excited. So we broke ground this past Wednesday.
That's
awesome.
Cool.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, congratulations. That's really great, especially with the base that you have. One of the things I wanted to ask you, obviously, you know, your performance and your ranking and everything, all the fights you've had, you're fighting in the UFC, but do you ever still find yourself having to defend karate to like people that are just coming in or don't know any better? Because obviously, you know, everyone thinks about the Affliction MMA type of gym, you know what I mean? And then when you bring up like traditional karate styles, where because I'm an Isshin-Ryu guy, I did Isshin-Ryu karate for 11 years, so every time, and then when I moved over to jiu-jitsu school, they were like, "Oh, what are you doing karate chops and stuff?" Like they make fun of you. You know, do you deal with that a lot?
You know what? The guys who are uneducated, I think. I have to, I'll defend myself. Always with a smile on my face, though, you know. But the guys that are experienced, we have a lot of guys that come to the gym. You know, Chris Weidman. We've had Rashad Evans, Nate Marquardt, Ryan Hall comes there for his striking as well. He's been up there for several of his camps. Nice. We got guys coming in left and right because they're. I remember in the earlier UFCs, the like you said, karate was frowned upon. Mm-hmm. A lot of the techniques that we did in karate, they say wouldn't work in a real situation. But I think a lot of that had to do with these guys who get in their black belts in like 3 months, starting up a gym right across the street and then doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? It made the whole base of karate just look bad. Yeah. But when Lyoto Machida stepped out there and was the champion, he was my inspiration. To one of my inspirations that, hey, you know, this stuff works. You know, like a spin hook kick in the early UFCs, nobody threw that. Yeah. But people don't understand, if you want to make it work, you got to spend time on it. If you spend enough time on it, you can make it work. And now you got guys, it's just the game has evolved so much that you know, you got guys doing all kinds of crazy stuff and making it work, you know? Yeah. George St. Pierre, you know, making karate work. You got guys like you know, even Conor McGregor comes from a karate background. Gunnar Nelson, Justin Scoggins, Michael Page Venom, who was a point fighter. You know, this is a guy that people said who couldn't break an egg because he was a point fighter. He's knocking dudes out. Yeah. You know, Raymond Daniels is doing great in the kickboxing. So, you know, when I start throwing guys out there like that, they're like, you know what? You're right. So, the things that you do in karate, people are using in martial arts, things that karate guys have been doing for hundreds of years. Yeah. There's a YouTube video out there. It's called Karate for MMA. Check it out if you can. It shows traditional guys doing kata. You know what kata is, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at kata and it's like, you're not going to do that in a real situation. But when you see the different moves in kata, you're not seeing the real application. It's just the technique.
Yeah.
And then when you see the real application to it in a real situation, like, oh, so that's what that is, When you're doing this weird move, you're actually doing a throw or a trip or something.
Yeah, or some really nasty stuff like grabbing the testicles and
yeah,
like
right?
that's in one of my katas, and I remember when my instructor showed that to me, I was like, oh my god, that's what that's for. but yeah, and then you see things like in when someone throws a front snap kick or a rear snap kick in an MMA fight, you hear people talk about it like it's this unseen thing, but it's been around, like you said, for hundreds of years.
Oh,
so
it's like the front, like you have like a Muay Thai front kick, right, which is more like a push kick.
Yeah.
And then you have like a karate taekwondo front kick. Look at what Lyoto Machida knocked out Randy Couture with, or Anderson Silva knocked out was it Vitor Belfort with karate front kick. You know what I'm saying? And it does work. You put it in the right spot, boom, done.
Considering kind of the how karate was seen in the early MMA, for me it was cool. My first fight I ever watched was Keith Hackney, so seeing White Tiger Kempo, I just looked at him as a badass. So when the first UFC came out, you were about 10 years old or so, give or take a little bit. Coming up from a traditional martial arts family, were you introduced to that early on, or was that something your dad kept away from you? Okay.
Oh, no. I was, as a family, when most people back then, in the 80s and early 90s who would go around and, they would be playing board games or whatever, we watched fights. That's what we did as a family. We would sit around, and didn't matter how gory it was, we were there. We were in the thick of it. And my dad took me to my first UFC event. It was UFC 2. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina.
That was 3. That was Keith.
Was that 3? That was 3.
Yeah.
UFC 3. That was when Kimo got his ponytail pulled out pretty much with Gracie. And that was like, it was like the gladiators, back in the day that we were watching. They didn't have any gloves. There were no rules. And I told my dad then, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this one day. I remember that. And when I got that first call with UFC, I was actually going to turn it down because I felt like I wasn't ready, because I put my jiu-jitsu and wrestling on the back burner because I was focused on kickboxing. That's what my dad did back in the 70s and 80s. That's what my sister did before me. So that's what I kind of grew up. Most of my fight career was in kickboxing. So I was, going up to TriStar with George St. Pierre because he would bring me up to help with his training camp. So I was learning more jiu-jitsu and wrestling to be a better sparring partner for him. Mm-hmm. And he was my inspiration, my true inspiration to switch from kickboxing to MMA. Had my first fight in 2010, 2012, UFC calls, and I was like, oh, I don't know, man. I remember Dad, he was like, come here, man. We went to his office. At the gym, he's coach. He's not my dad. He's my coach.
Yeah.
He's like, listen, man, you told me at age 12 you were going to do this one day, and the UFC calls, you going to turn it down? He's like, no. He's like, you go out there and just go with it, man. This could be, they may never call again. Go out there and have some fun. And you know what? You're right. So been along for the ride ever since, bro.
When was it frustrating for you coming up as a kickboxer? Now there's a lot of divisions. We even Bellator Kickboxing Glory, Rise in Japan, K1 even has made a comeback with smaller divisions. But for the most part, I imagine in your early 20s, it was basically K1 in the heavyweight division. Was that frustrating that there really wasn't an outlet for smaller fighters? I know you eventually worked into to Chuck Norris's World Combat League, but was there ever a time where you were kind of wondering if there was going to be a door that would open up, because it was monsters in K1 in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know what? It was a little frustrating because I've done everything I could in the kickboxing arena, won everything, won the Walker World Championships, the OXA World Championships, the IKF World Championships. I don't know how many times. So I pretty much did everything I could. And me being a smaller guy and watching these guys in K1, I still love watching the K1 highlights, man. I'll go back and watch those dudes all day. So it was a little frustrating, to be honest with you. I'm like, what do I do next? And during that time, I had actually torn every ligament in my left leg. So I was out for 3 years.
Wow.
Tore the ACL, PCL, every CL was gone.
Wow.
And so it was rough, man. It was rough, yeah. So the doctor told me I would probably never fight again. And now I look at him now, I'm like,
Yeah.
see, I told you I was going to do it, you know?
Yeah. Hey,
And it happened. It actually happened at a good point because, you know, I've been fighting since I was 15. And it was at a point to where I didn't know if I wanted to compete anymore.
oh, wow.
You know, I was fighting just about every weekend, kickboxing, and I was getting burnt out, but I wasn't really sure how I was going to tell my dad, you know, because my dad's been with me since day one. And him being an old school fighter, I just didn't have the heart to really tell him. And it was kind of a blessing, to be honest with you. It happened at the right time. Ended up tearing my MCL everything. I've had 4 knee surgeries on my left knee and 2 on my right.
Oh, wow.
I was out for 3 years. So I was like, man, being out kind of gave me that fire, you know, just kind of rekindled that fire to go out there and compete again. So it was a blessing, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I tore my groin when I was 31, and that was when I thought about quitting training and stuff. And you know, if you pull through that stuff, then you can pull through anything. So that's crazy how an injury can actually motivate you. One last question for me. You just talked about the 70s and 80s and growing up in martial arts and stuff. What's your go-to motivational martial arts film that gets you riled up?
Dude, okay. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it before. It's an oldie but a goodie. If you haven't seen it, you got to go check it out. And it's a classic 80s film. And if you watch it now, you're like, this is corny, but I love it. Have you ever seen the movie The Best of the Best?
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
That's Van Damme's first movie.
Pop it, Tommy. Pop it.
Oh, no.
Dude, that was my
Eric
jam,
Roberts.
man.
Yeah.
I love that movie. It was like the Americans versus the Koreans or something like that. And it was badass. Like I used to watch that all the time. I was a big Jean-Claude Van Damme, like, you know, back in his movies, but watching his movie, all his movies are pretty much the same. Always that like tournament style, you know, fighting like Bloodsport or was it Lionheart, and you had the Quest and the Kickboxer.
Yeah.
I watched all of them, man. I love it. I'm a huge movie buff. If a movie comes out, I'm going Friday to see the new Captain Marvel. So count me in. Oh yeah.
So let me just really quick. I actually met Eric Roberts and talked to him. Did you know he actually holds a black belt in Taekwondo?
No way.
Like he was legit for that whole movie. Yeah. I met him.
I had no idea.
3 years ago, I met him, and he told me that in Atlantic City.
That is cool. Now, where were you at? How'd you meet him? Was he at an event?
It was something. It was one of these weird like horror conventions. I don't know why he was there, but I actually went up to him and I told him, I was like, you know, one of the most. I'm not for nothing. It's one of. I have a long list of motivational martial arts films, but that's definitely one of them for me. And you know, as I actually thought I was going to grow up and fight in that same competition that I found out was made up for that movie. But
wow, man.
He told me
he was a black belt in Taekwondo. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that
he told me that.
Even better now.
Yeah.
Speaking of martial arts and movie legends, how cool was it to fight for, and I'm assuming meet and hang out a little bit with Chuck Norris?
Man, Chuck Norris is, you know, I don't know if you guys know, he's the number 5 most popular name in the world. In the world. Like, he's the most popular guy in the world, besides the U.S. president and some other guys, but he's the top number 5 guy, most popular guy in the world. And the nicest guy you'd ever met in your life. He's got a black belt under my brother-in-law, Carlos Machado, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he's been, and those guys have hung out for many years. And Carlos, my brother-in-law, trains with him quite frequently, keep in touch with him. They're, you know, family friends. So it was pretty cool to be able to fight for him. And it was such a weird thing at the time because it wasn't even in a cage. It was in a bowl. It was like a soup bowl that you fought in, which was pretty crazy. And it was kind of new at the time and exciting. So, you know, I had dinner with him a few times. It was almost like he was almost too nice for his own good, like just way too nice, which was pretty cool. So I think he's in his 80s now, right? Is he in his 80s?
He's got to be up there, yeah.
Gotta be. It's gonna be a sad day, bro. When he's a martial arts legend. I don't know if he ever did. I don't think he ever did any full contact kickboxing. I think he was more of a karate fighter, point fighter. But other than that, he's a legend, man. I used to love it. Walker, Texas Ranger was my jam. I used to watch that every freaking week. I don't know if you remember that, Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love.
I'm older than both you guys. Lone Wolf McQuade is one of my favorite movies of his.
Oh yeah, man. I love it. Freaking love it. But yeah, Chuck Norris is the man. I don't care what anybody says.
So, I mean, that's it for me. I don't have anything left. Did we lose Matt?
I think we lost him. He's stuck with a grin on his face.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I guess I'll close it out. I really appreciate your time, Steven. Thank you so much. March 23rd, ESPN Plus, that's their 6th event. You versus Anthony Pettis. Good luck to you, sir. Thanks again for jumping in on this.
Hey, man, anytime, and would love to do it again. Hopefully, after the fight, we can get back on, talk about it. But I appreciate you having me on, my friend. Definitely a pleasure, and hopefully we do it again sometime.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Tell Matt I said what's up.
All right.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
All right.